Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Agent Investor. The goal of The Agent Investor is to help our audience make informed decisions through conversations with individuals involved in commercial and real estate field. Today we have a good friend of mine, Xavier Amos of New England Renovations. New England Renovations is a construction management company based out of Central Connecticut, and I'm not going to talk too much about the company. I'm going to let Xavier talk on it. So, Xavier, glad to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today, Brandon.
Yes.
Like you said, my name is Xavier Amos. I'm the owner of New England Renovations, a construction management company, right centered out of Bristol, but we cover all of Connecticut, but more focused, follow the right clients wherever they go. And we focus on major renovations and providing quality and transparency for our clients. They always say construction is a messy field, but it is the oldest field. So it's about time to bring some order back to the industry.
Yeah, and with you saying that, what you just said, actually, that's one of the reasons why I kind of attached to Xavier is based, just his approach to how he, from my standpoint, how I see it, how he approaches his projects, and in terms of process and just modern using modern processes versus old school ways of doing things. But again, I'm not going to dig deep into it. I'm going to let him talk. So we're actually going to get right to it. So today we're going to be kind of talking about the relationship and just between contractors and investors and kind of some of the ways they can work together and have a really good ecosystem to work to one another to make to have a win-win outcome on both sides and to have continued success with one another. So we're going to start with some questions right from the start. So what strategies help align investor goals with contractor execution?
So I would say one of the first things that an investor should do on every project is call in a construction manager early on in their planning process.
Mm,
That way, anything that involves a physical change to their property, you have an expert, you have someone who's going to lead the cause for finances, for who's actually going to perform the work. And by doing that, then you start to build a well-rounded plan from day one. A lot of times, a lot of investors make their plan, make their idea, call in their attorneys, call in their business partners, come up with a plan, and then they bring it to a construction manager to build it for them. By that
mm.
time, the construction manager usually has to sort out all of the questions that were left in the air along the way, like that revolve around constructability, timelines, finances. And usually by that time, a construction manager always catches an investor by surprise, whether it's the schedule, the timeline, or the quality of the build in the given budget. And so if an investor wants to skip that shock, it's smart to get a construction manager in the door early.
Yeah, and with that kind of going off script here a little bit. So with that said, it sounds like really construction manager should be part of your team that's in general conversation before you even engage in a project. So even if you're just in the concept phase of thinking about what you want to do, it's best to engage just to even get a head start on some of the potential issues you may run into or challenges you may run into and things to consider are things that you could recommend way in advance before getting under contract on the property and then giving you a call and say, hey, we got this property and next thing you know, you're explaining, hey, you're going to be so underwater on this because you didn't tell me any of this, and I could have gave you a head start. So, yeah, it sounds
Absolutely.
like yeah, it sounds like it's you would be a good person to, or your team would be good to reach out to and have conversations with way before a project started. So, something for everybody to keep in mind. All right, so let's keep it moving here. What permitting and code considerations should real estate investors keep in mind?
So I got two here. The first one that comes to mind that I'm a little bit passionate about is common spaces and egress paths. So
Mm,
this is a big consideration for multifamilies, commercial buildings, anywhere in which you have common spaces for the tenants or occupiers of the building. The codes and regulations for these spaces are very tight and very stringent. It's the first thing that a fire marshal is going to look at when reviewing your space.
mm,
And that's everything from having the right lighting throughout the stairs or common areas, egress paths. They need to be automatic. They can't be on a switch or anything like that.
mm.
To even self-closing doors. Every door that's facing an egress path or a common area has to be self-closing. That way, if a fire breaks out, the fire has to get through a fire-rated door before entering the common areas.
Mm.
Um, but it's outside of just fire. For example, stairs that are winding in common areas. So think about going from a first to a second floor, going around a curve of a stairwell. Any winding stairs need to be painted with high visibility paint, for example, so that tenants and occupiers could see where they're stepping. So a lot of safety concerns, a lot of fire concerns as well. And the egress paths and common areas are first priority when I go into a space, because I know it's the first priority when a fire marshal or a building official is going in. That's the first thing they see. So I always bring up egress paths and common spaces when talking about code compliance. But two, especially here in New England and with a lot of existing buildings, asbestos is a massive concern. People don't even know that modern materials have asbestos in them and which ones. Everything from some joint compounds to even some drywall nowadays still have asbestos in them. Goes by different names and sometimes, different compositions, but it's still a massive concern. And if you're buying a house or you're buying a property, and you're not sure if the pipes are wrapped in fiberglass insulation in the mechanical spaces, if you don't know if the walls have lead in the paint, these are all massive risks. It can be very expensive risks that you would want someone to certify or someone to look over before investing.
Got it. And with that said, so what's the, what will be the difference between someone just hiring a general, maybe inspector, commercial inspector, versus maybe bringing a construction manager on board as well, or maybe they work together. What does that look like?
Yeah, so usually they go side by side. It's really smart to have an inspector along with your general contractor, and most of the time your general contractor will call out the inspector and have that relationship with them already.
Mm,
And so when they get called out and they find pain points around the home or the property, your GC will know how to can create proposals and estimates and options on how to remediate that, where the inspector will just flag you and
got it.
say call a GC. So if you work in tandem, an inspector will give you that official report, but the GC will give you the remediation options from then on.
Got it. Got it. Good to know. Yeah, and I never really thought about the egress in the common area being I mean, obviously it's a major factor, but never really thought of much about it. But looking back on some of the properties I've sold and seen, I could definitely see how that could be a major issue because a lot of properties, people like egress, some think because there's just this exit space that it serve as an egress without really thinking it through and not realizing it may have to be completely rebuilt or another addition has to be on the building just to support that egress option, making it super expensive. And and another question is, what is it much more complicated in terms of egress in common areas versus the the residential aspect itself or the living area itself, or is it relatively simple compared to the egress in common areas?
Well, they always go hand in hand with one another.
Sure.
You open a door and one space is next to another, so they always flow together. But
Yeah.
the ones the code compliance in tenant spaces, I would say are more common knowledge. Make sure you have
Mm.
your fire alarms. In Connecticut, quick note, so it just became illegal to sell battery operated fire alarms. So you
Ah.
can only get the ones that include a 10-year battery in them.
Mm.
So making sure that you have someone to stay on top of the laws is always good as well.
Got it.
Making sure that every bedroom, hallways in a home, are there and are present are always a big concern. But like you said, common spaces and egress paths are always forgotten about. And yeah, that it's a big red flag and it's a big priority in a lot of fire marshals' eyes.
Yeah.
So if you want to get on their good side, definitely prioritize the egress spaces.
Got it. Got it. All right. Oh, very good. All right, cool. So let's keep it moving here. All right, so roll into the next question. When you think about ROI, how do design, technology, and sustainability factor into types of renovations that create lasting value for ownership and investors?
So this is very critical to why I created my business and one of my key values, which is quality. I
Mm,
think in our world, we like flashy things and we like things that catch our attention, but we don't always care about the true value of what that is. Kind of like fool's gold. It looks like gold. It will catch a few eyes, but it's not quite the same quality as real gold. And a lot of times people don't know the difference between the products. And I would say as we get further and further removed, especially in our education from the field of construction, the more easy it is to, I don't want to say trick, but
Yeah,
get
just
one
say it.
over. Yeah, trick people on quality.
Yeah.
So I would say make sure that you have someone that you have qualified craftsmen in each trade working with you so that you know the difference, you can discern the difference between a facade and true value.
Mm.
But then also tying to this, I would say it's very smart throughout this whole process, almost on like a higher level. It's very smart to have a future-proof design. Investors must think about the entire life cycle of their property, not just that first year of expenses, few years of expenses, but the entire life cycle. If you
Mm.
have a buy and hold portfolio, you might be holding on to that property for a long time. And if you invest a little bit more on the front end of things, you can have an easier managed property throughout, and also a property that has more value when you go to sell it at the end, if you go to sell it. A lot of times, especially in residential markets, people buy homes and invest a lot of money into their home. Maybe in the first few years, they put a little bit extra money. Maybe after 10 years, they do. But they never add that value back in to their property. And then when they go to sell 20, 30 years down the line, they expect to get the same value for that they had in their home without ever doing that maintenance throughout.
Mm.
So now they're selling a property that's 30 years older,
Yep.
um, and expecting that same return on their value that they had 30 years earlier on a newer home or property, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of looking into that, digging a little deeper on that. What about technology? I personally haven't sold many properties. A lot of my properties are still, 100-year-old properties, brick, 620 unit. But how does technology play a role in properties now compared to some of the older legacy stuff here in Connecticut, at least?
I think one new field and one new interest, point of focus that's been stirred up I would say in the past decade has been smart homes, smart properties, adding
Mm.
sensors throughout your home, or your property, so that you can manage your property from wherever you can get Wi-Fi access.
Yeah.
So, for example, bathrooms, basements can all have leak detection systems.
Mm.
Doors can have reed switches or open and close switches. There can be smart thermostats, humidity sensors as well. You can have those in your attics to track your humidity buildup in your attics. You can even tie these smart sensors into your phone, your
Mm.
security system, and you can have a home that works around you and the way you live. For example, major kick has been high efficiency homes and high efficiency properties. For example, if one example is lighting situation, so lights
Hmm.
can be tied to your phone, or let's say your tenant's phone or businesses within their phone or their GPS. So lights can automatically turn off if no one is suspected to be present. So that's saving on electricity bill costs. HVAC, same thing. If people leave in the earlier the day or show up to work in the beginning of the day, you can set a timer where your HVAC kicks in about 30 minutes before people show up to cool off the space. But as soon as they leave, you can have it set to turn off or have it at an ambient temperature, to
Got
not
it.
waste more electricity, more heat throughout your space.
Got it.
So technology is definitely changing the field, home ownership, property ownership, and it has a long way to go. I think that we are only in the infancy of what it's truly going to be. And as humans, we're all living in a home in similar fashions to previous generations. We all go home, have dinner together. We have a lot of traditions around the home that have been the same for many, many generations.
Mm.
Um, but I think we're reaching a dawn where that might change, where your house isn't just going to be, a set of walls and a ceiling around you, almost as if they don't change at all. Most people live in a home where it was painted 5, 10 years ago, and that's just the color of the wall. I
Yeah.
think we're going to enter a new era where people have true freedom over their space,
Mm.
um, and have true knowledge of their space as well, when it comes to how their home is performing and
Yeah.
functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like the technology, while I'm sure some tech will be for the sake of not convenience, but just personalization of your home, a lot of it will be geared towards efficiencies, especially when it comes more so to commercial spaces or even, larger multifamily spaces. A lot of that would be, because the truth is, in a lot of that spaces, you're not just putting technology in for the sake of putting tech. It has to have a return on investment, some form, some way. So I'd imagine the commercial buildings, like you said, some of the, a lot of the automated lighting, or more so, because automated lighting is pretty, I would say standard in newer buildings, but it's pretty standard, but even more automated, or more, just more so learning, technology that learns versus technology that's just simply on and off at a certain time, the
Exactly.
lunch trend. So yeah, absolutely, technology is going to get super super interesting. And I'm curious that, and I'm going on this on a tangent here.
Yeah.
Do you see any technology that's useful in multifamily? Because I tend to see it's challenging. I've seen it in some of the newer, more modern builds, but do you see technology being beneficial to owners in larger multifamily buildings in some ways?
Absolutely. So going
Yeah.
back to your energy performance, energy efficiency, you can have electricity meters on each of your tenants, banks. You can have water meters
Mm,
on your boiler units. You can track how much water is going in and out of your home, how much electricity is being used as well. Like I said, as a landlord or a property owner, if there's a leak in your basement, but you're, let's say across the world on a vacation or doing business, you could be the first person to know, based on the technology you've installed, to know that there's a leak in your basement. And not even that, if you have a property manager, someone that you're working with on site, you can let them know. There can be an alert to their phone to take care of that issue, before a human eyes is actually down in that basement again, or wherever that leak is. Another thing outside of electronic based technology, I've seen a lot of improvement with the technology around windows as well,
mm,
and the energy efficiency and the resistance of windows themselves. Recently, I came across this one company that builds historic windows in historic fashions, but doesn't quite use the old ways, but modern ways to build the glass, just an old technique. So while they can build a window that looks 100 years old, they can build it in a way where it's more energy efficient than a foot, like a concrete wall a foot thick. So to
mm,
put another way, you can build your entire home out of a foot thick concrete wall and ceilings,
mm,
and you can place these historic windows in, and you can blow as hard as you want air, wind, hurricane winds against this house, and you will feel more of a breeze through that concrete than you would through that window.
mm.
So I think that technology across the board in many, many industries, are really improving. Like I was trying to say a little bit before, a lot of other industries are seeing massive growth, but I think that especially in multifamilies, since it has to do a lot with people and how they live, I think
Yep.
it takes a little longer for technology to be adopted. But when it
Yep.
does, I think, like you're saying, it's going to lead to massive convenience, massive efficiencies, all tailored around the human experience, all tailored around how humans operate and humans function, and not just an automatic light whenever.
All right. So, kind of starting to wrap up here. This is my last question I had, even though we may lead into some other ones. But, what lessons from past projects highlight the biggest risk and opportunities for investors?
Yeah, so I would say I want to say failure challenge, I would say, is dedicating a lot of time to commercial projects. And that's something that I'm building my company on. So it's a risk, but it's also, a reward at the end of the day. So I had this project. I was working with a commercial, a commercial startup, a business, and it was their first business. Money was super tight. They're trying to build in a large facility, larger than they were thinking from the beginning. And I worked with them to value engineer the project to fit their budget, fit the space. Um, and then, a little bit of time passes and they realize that, my construction budget that I gave them wasn't their full business startup cost, which, it is a gap, a massive gap. After value engineering, putting a lot of time into the project, there ended up just being a gap fund, like a gap in funding needed that was just too large, and the project just ended up fizzling out. and it was a lot of time dedicated. And so that was my risk. But I also think that in the same breath, it's also a massive opportunity, especially for investors. There's a lot of small businesses that are out there that are trying to take these risks, trying to grow into maybe a little bit bigger shoes than they currently hold.
Yeah.
And I think it's a massive opportunity for investors to find them and to invest in, local people. Um,
Yeah. Got it. No, absolutely. And kind of going back on that, what you said, how do you limit your risk? Because I'm always concerned with poking at contractors or construction managers for their time. So how do you evaluate like the risk of your time versus knowing what's worth it, what's not? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot
yeah,
about how you pick your clients, but how do you determine how much what's worth spending time on, what's not?
I think there's, I would say, like two different perspectives that come on this. So professional, it comes down to building the right clients, right leads, working with them, doing the research, and setting down open communication on where the project's currently at, what's needed, um, the gap in knowledge or the gap in information from where we are now to what we need in order for it to be a successful project. And I measure from then basically how much risk is associated on my front and whether I need to refer out to someone more fitting, or if it I should just be honest with them and move on from that project. But from another perspective, I built my company to be a tool for my community to grow.
Mm,
So I always say a lot of my business is planting seeds. I always like to help my community. I like to go out there and put in that time and that sweat equity. Ask my fiance, I'm always working. I'm always
mm,
putting that extra legwork. And so even if someone is not in that perfect right position for me to help them with my services, I will still give them guidance. I'll give them that counseling to get them on that right path, because I always think it returns back to you tenfold. And I'm
yeah.
starting to see that in the market. So, so professionally, pre-qualify. Personally, just be a good guy.
All right, so we are starting to wrap this up. We're done with our normal questions, and we're going to kind of dig into your personal a little bit before we take off. So, when you're not managing projects and working in the business, what are some of your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing?
So first and foremost, I'm a big family person. I'm getting married in about 4 or 5 days here, so super excited about that. And I have a lot of cousins. I have a brother, and we've built a little bit of a great community here in Central Connecticut. So I like to spend a
Nice.
lot of good time with them. I go to a lot of cybersecurity and AI conferences. It's my brother's master's program, so it's trying
Mm,
to stay on top of cutting edge technology with him. Always pushing each other um, with our knowledge. So it's a healthy competition there. I fly drones, so I have a drone that I like to fly.
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I go to the park a lot, and I'll fly the drone through the different trails here in Connecticut. I'm a big fan of Sleepy Giant Trail, so I'll take my drone, get up to
Mm,
the top, and just fly it out and see what I can see. So yeah,
nice.
I like to stick with family, learn, and yeah, small little hobbies on the side.
Cool. How do people find you and get a hold of you moving forward?
Well, my name is Xavier. So look that up first and foremost, Xavier Amos. Second, New England Renovations. So New England Renovations LLC.com. Find me on LinkedIn as well, Xavier Amos or New England Renovations. You can email me, Xavier.amos with New England Renovations LLC, or even Facebook. So I'm out there. Just search my name up, and I bet you'll find me.
Got it. And I'll make sure I tag your links in the video as well. Last thing, do you have any final words for the audience before we take off?
Course. So, as I said earlier, make sure you meet with a construction project manager earlier in your planning process. It's going to save you so much legwork, so much time, so much cost, and it's going to increase your long-term quality.
Well, Xavier, first off, thank you so much for joining us. And to our audience, thank you all for joining us for another episode of The Agent Investor. We want to wish you all the best in your health and happiness. And we look forward to catch you on the next one. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you later.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Brendan.